So, welcome to this week's unique segment. This
This
week's
week's
unique segment, the history of Edge, the rated R superstar himself. So, in this segment, we're going to take a look back at the 2021 Royal Rumble winner, heading to the main event at WrestleMania, the man, the myth, the legend that is Edge. And what a career he has had, decades, we were just saying before we hit record on this, decades in the business. Started wrestling in 92,
decades.
joined WWF in 1996. So, and here he is today, 2021, still going strong, looking at his list of accomplishments, like, he's a Hall of Famer because of what we're going to go through now. So he's a four-time WWE champion, a seven-time world heavyweight champion. I don't think anyone under the WWE umbrella has won the world heavyweight championship more times than Edge. So that in itself is incredible. He's a WCW United States
Indeed.
champion during the whole invasion thing. He's been the Intercontinental champion five times as well. Tag team, we can't forget that. He's the world tag team champion 12 times, seven of which was with Christian. He's also been a tag champ with Hulk Hogan, twice with Chris Benoit, once with Randy Orton as part of RKO, and again with Chris Jericho. He's also held the WWE Tag Team Championships twice, once with Mysterio and again once with Chris Jericho. He's won the King of the Ring. He's a two-time Money in the Bank winner, upon which both times he was successful in his cash-ins, once against John Cena in 2005 and again against Undertaker in 2007. And he is now a two-time Royal Rumble winner, winning it in 2010 and then 11 years later, a couple of weeks ago in 2021. So my gosh, what a storied career
Yep.
for someone who,
What a
you
career.
know, looking back, just thinking, the first time we saw him and stuff to where he is today, like, it's a hell of a journey that, and them accomplishments is just incredible. Sometimes I think Edge, you think of like the greats in the business, and a lot of the time he gets kind of overlooked, and then you read those accomplishments and you look, triple crown, probably quadruple more, crown champion now in WWE. So it's just insane, incredible.
Totally agree. And remember, you can't spell ledge without edge.
Love it, fucking love it.
So that's a t-shirt there, Carl. Get it made. Anyway, so I figured it's probably not going to be the easiest topic in the early years for us, Carl, because I don't know about you, but I certainly remember more sort of not even the Brood really, but moving away from the Brood and being the amazing tag team that
Hmm.
was Edge and Christian. But to give a bit of a brief, because this is the history of Edge, we'll go back to talking about his early years. Now, I'll need your help on this one a little bit, Carl, because it would appear there's this slightly differing stories on how this came about. So I'll gloss over the early. He started wrestling in '92. Obviously, he's Canadian. Um, he wrestled with Christian, among many other names, on those sort of independent scenes without WWE. So we'd worked with him many a time before. Went under different aliases. I believe one of them was Sexton Hardcastle, which is
Legend.
that's a better name than Edge. So there you go. But from what I've heard, Bret Hart, or certainly Bret Hart's business manager, had some heavy involvement in him sort of finding his way
Hmm.
to WWE. I think it's important to know that he did have some time in WCW, so they're probably the next biggest promotion he'd been with. I don't think he'd done a lot of work with them, but certainly was notable on there for a bit. But the reason I need your help on this, Carl, is because as I understood it, it was Carl DeMarco, who was Bret Hart's business manager at the time, who saw something in Edge and told him to put in an audition to WWE or however it worked at the time. And Copeland, wow, yeah, let's go with his real name, Adam Copeland, Edge, had actually basically not really heard anything from that audition, but then by some sort of chance of fate, Carl DeMarco ended up involved. I believe he was the president of WWF Canada, and then from there was like in a prime position to put in a good word for them. And then come '96, we see Edge joining the WWE. Now, From what that's as I understood it, but I believe you've mentioned that he had some sort of push and some sort of involvement from Bret Hart. So, at the risk of being wrong, do you want to talk about that a little bit as well? Just because obviously I don't want to be full of misinformation, so we'll give it all. We'll give all the info.
So one of these stories is true. So I heard somewhere, it might have even been an old Edge interview, but he said that obviously he was in Canada. I think he was working out of Winnipeg at the time, and I think he went down to Calgary to see Brett. So I don't know whether it was part of the dungeon, or whether it was what he was doing down there, but he went down for a bit of training or something with Brett himself, and kind of Brett had kind of looked at him, spoke to him, and said, you know what, he's got all the fundamentals. He's got good size. He's got good ability. He's going to go and put in a good word with Jim Ross, who was the head of talent relations at the time for WWF. And I believe off the back of Brett's recommendation, they brought him into a live show, or they did something with him. I think it might have even been in Canada, and I believe it was Michael Hayes got in the ring with him, just to kind of put him through his paces. And they were like, "Yeah, Brett's absolutely right. He's definitely got something." And then I think he was offered a contract shortly after as well, which I think was something like $200 a week or something like that, which I think he was chuffed with, because it was way more than what he was earning at the time, just as like a developmental contract for WWF. And then that's kind of how he got his foot in the door. From what I heard, I think Brett was obviously the guy who managed to get Jim Ross's ear to say, you need to take a look at this Sexton Hardcastle kid and see whether he could be a good fit.
Yeah, JR thinking it was a dirty movie, went for it and wasn't.
Good old JR.
Joking, of course. But no, I believe he actually trained with a few different people who were involved with Bret Hart, didn't he? So the likes of Shamrock and Test and all that. So I mean, again, it's is Shamrock Canadian? I think Test.
I don't think Shamrock is. No, I could be wrong. Actually, I've never really thought about that before. I don't think so, though.
But in either case, I know they in the early years they all done a fair bit of training together. So he's worked with he came up with some of the bigger names in the business. So again, we have to slightly gloss over his early years, but he gets his foot in the door with WWE, Carl, and then we have, probably looking back now, quite a strange storyline. Probably not one that would work today, but and this is still slightly before my time, but one that you'll certainly remember. And this is Edge sort of starting out in a feud with Gangrel, the vampire himself. And Gangrel brings in Edge's brother, Christian. And slowly through this feud, they win Edge over, and we form the Brood, which were just buying into that whole popular vampire Blade type thing at the time, by all accounts. But they were vampires. They drank blood. In fact, I don't know if they were really meant to be vampires. I know Gangrel was. I don't know how heavily they leaned into that, because again, I was more Edge and Christian than I was the Brood, so that was slightly before my time. Were they vampires too, or were they just hanging around?
I don't think they had fangs, but I don't know whether because Gangrel's thing was obviously he had the fangs. They were real fangs. He got them done, and obviously he used to drink the blood or whatever from a chalice. I think they might have got involved in that. But I believe at the time, I don't know whether it was Blade, as you say, or whether, was it, I don't even know what was around back then. Was it like Buffy and Angel, or was that later? I don't really know.
Probably Lost Boys or whatever.
So I believe, obviously, that was kind of the thing they wanted at the time. They had the kind of look for vampires and stuff. So that's where it kind of came about.
Well, so we had some work with the Brood, and I'm not discrediting the work with the Brood, but obviously that then sort of evolved into them joining the Ministry, and then not joining the Ministry, and then betraying Gangrel, and that sort of led to the sort of end of the Brood, as it were. And again, it was probably really fun at the time. By today's standards, this probably seems a bit cheesy, really, but that's what we had back in the era, Carl. Back in the era,
for Edge, pretty cool that he's not been there that long, and straight away he's part of a faction with Undertaker. I mean, there was a shitload of people part of that faction at the time.
Oh yeah,
obviously you had.
Oh yeah. The Ministry was huge at one point. I think they joined the Ministry around the time of Stephanie McMahon's kidnap, that storyline. Okay. So there was a lot of people involved at that point, but even so, it's still a good accolade to say quite early on that that's the kind of thing he was doing, definitely. But I think it's fairly clear from that point that, you know, Edge and Christian were, you know, they already knew each other, but they worked really well together, and there was something. There's something there. So what we slowly moved into, and I want to say around early 2000s, certainly when I started watching, we had Edge and Christian as just an amazing, one of the high flying tag teams, one of the most notable tag teams of that era, along with the Dudley Boys and the Hardy Boys. And in fact, Carl, I believe they were the inventors of the TLC, were they not?
Yes. Which is a pretty fucking cool concept, isn't it? At the time, obviously, you had the Dudleys in ECW, who were very much known for their tables, and then you know the Hardys were high flyers, so it was like that made sense with ladders. So they were like, well, we can have the chairs.
Yeah, you guys get chairs.
Which I mean, to be fair, they put to good use. They
But
had the concerto and everything, didn't they? So they, you know, to be fair, they made a pretty good go of doing some stuff with chairs.
I think being able to, like, never mind the titles, and don't be wrong, titles are important. It's great to be able to walk away and say I'm a 5-time this and so on. But the fact that, like, you are the reason the TLC exists, that's fucking awesome. That's an accolade in itself, isn't it? Really. So that's pretty fucking cool. So then obviously that propelled them as one of the better, bigger tag teams in the WWE. And you're gonna have to educate me on the 5-second pose, Carl, because this was sort of part of that whole gimmick, wasn't it? Of when they were the sort of arrogant heel tag team, I believe. But so regale me this 5-second
obviously
pose,
we had
Carl.
obviously all the stuff with the Brood, and then they went into being like a fantastic tag team. You know, TLC was incredible. You know, still get some plaudits to this day. But then the side of themselves that they hadn't really shown at this point was like the comedic kind of element, I suppose. And as you said, they were kind of a heelish kind of tweener kind of tag team at the time, and they used to go around different, you know, because they used to work a different part of America or wherever each week, didn't they, for each show? And they'd always do, you know, for the benefit of those with flash photography, because obviously cell phones weren't a thing back then. They were going to do a 5-second pose, and like they used to just do the most crazy, outlandish things that would usually take the piss out of whichever, you know, state they were in. So like in the image we've got here, I think they must have been somewhere down south, and they just put the fake teeth in and played the fucking banjo, and just like, you know, it was just that was the first kind of.
But I think like this was when I think they were really coming into their own as characters, but they played really good heels as well. And to be honest, this is like probably what led to the eventual split up, which is the next part of it, of Edge and Christian splitting up, both going their separate ways. And I know this is about Edge, but I do want to make a side note of saying, like, it's not very often you see a tag team split up and both of them do well. And I'm not going to try and pretend here that they're on par. No offense to Christian, but I would say in terms of accolades and status, I think Edge was probably the bigger guy there.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But they both did incredibly well on their solo run, and normally you see one suffer quite a lot when they split up. If you look at the likes of Bubba Ray and Devon, like Devon's, again, he's a legend. I'm not going to knock him, but like Devon went into the whole Reverend Devon stuff. So you usually see one suffer with like a bad gimmick. But when these two split up, obviously, Edge, I think at that point, that's when he moved into his Rob Zombie, really cool entrance music kind of thing. Had a decent solo run. I want to say had started out with a feud with Christian over the IC title, and sort of propelled himself in that sense. And obviously, Christian, we had the sort of, his whole initial gimmick was the fact that he wasn't dragged down by a tag team anymore. His whole theme music was based on that. At last, you're on. And his character work again was fantastic. So it's great to see that neither party suffered from that tag team splitting up, even though they were an ace tag team. But we get to see Edge now having a solo run, which is where he racked up a lot of his because he wasn't world title level at this point, but this is where he racked up his IC titles, reigns and the like there. And we then lead to probably one of my favorite of this era, but second actually, because the one after is fantastic as well. But his feud with Kurt Angle I thought was fantastic, and to get over such a daft gimmick of like hair versus hair. And another accolade that really should be on the list that never is the fact that, you know, Edge really propelled the whole "You Suck" chant as well.
It's insane,
if
really.
you recall, during this. Yeah. And I'm not saying he invented the "You Suck" chant, because obviously the crowd themselves did that, but he helped propel that as a mainstay for Kurt, and that sits with Kurt now. They even say it with
Do you know what
affection
though? To
now.
be fair, I'm not sure whether he actually did because I don't think they were. I don't even think they were chanting it at that point. I remember a promo from Edge, and he was saying like, you know what, that everyone should chant "You suck" or something like that. I vividly remember him saying that and trying to get it over. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know
Mm,
whether they were already doing it anyway or what, but it's almost like synonymous with like Stone Cold's "What" chant. Like as you said, it still lives with him,
yeah.
doesn't it? It's not gone away.
I'll never forget, and again, I know we're talking about Edge, but I'll never forget when Kurt was out on injury, and when he come back, and they were still chanting "You suck," but with like so much affection for the fact that he's back, and you're like, how is this now become an affectionate thing? Like he was lapping it up, and they were loving him, and you're like, but you're still saying "You suck," but it just became a thing. Um, but yeah, I always give Edge a lot of credit for pushing that over, because I do think there was an undercurrent of it anyway, but I really think he helped propel that as a thing that became synonymous with Kurt during this feud. Um, and it was a really fun game, even after the fact when Kurt was trying to sort of pretend that he didn't have a bald
He
head
had
and
the
stuff.
little
It's so stupid but
wrestling
so
thing on,
good.
didn't he, with the wig?
Yeah. And then I'd be interested to get your take on it, but obviously the next notable thing for me, and the bit I want to go to career wise after this, is obviously everything that went down with Matt
Mhm.
Hardy. And I do think like there was definitely a massive shoot element to this, right? You know, there was definitely some real emotion to that. That their ultimate, the sort of the ultimate match that it led to, the climax of the feud, as it were, was such a stiff match that there's no way that they weren't genuinely pissed off with one another. And by all accounts, like there were some
Mhm.
betrayals. Like none of that, like some of that, a lot of that weren't story.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But imagine, and I know they've probably put a lot of water under the bridge now, so I'm not trying to bring it back up. But imagine being in Matt Hardy position, feeling betrayed by both him and Lita, being so pissed off, and then it becomes a work because there's a good story to tell here, and then you propel Edge into that whole rated R character, because that's how I feel it went down. Is like that he became this like massively awesome heel on the
Mhm.
back of that. And it just so happens that's when he starts getting his world title runs and stuff. So it's like that to me, that's crazy that it came from such a place. Now, I'd be interested to get your opinion on that, because that was me watching it way back when. But there's no way that there wasn't some shoot element to that,
I mean,
surely.
I remember watching it at the time. I don't know how old I was, but when Matt Hardy rocked back up, because I think he got released or something around that time,
Yeah, yeah,
and obviously you felt for the guy because he was obviously with Lita, and then they'd obviously had some kind of affair or something, hadn't they? And Hardy found out about it. He wasn't impressed. He'd been released, and then as you said, someone clearly thought, okay, we can print some money with this, so let's get Matt back and get him in some sort of like shoot angle. And when I first saw him, I was like, holy shit, has he actually jumped the barricade? You know what I mean? And it did create that level of like, oh my God. So it was definitely a bit of a killer feud, but I think you're absolutely right. It was this
but
that kind of propelled that rated R thing, wasn't it? The live sex
yeah.
celebration, stuff like that,
This is the thing, and it was such a work, right? It was a work. There's no way they'd have genuinely let Matt jump the barricade if he was truly pissed off and what. So it was definitely a work. But if you go back and watch that match that they had, it was such a stiff match. Like they definitely wanted to
God
hurt
knows.
each other.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I don't look at it any other way. Like they wanted to hurt each other. That was such a stiff match.
And it's kind of it's mad to think that they just let it happen. Like I know people have gone out and worked stiff before against one another. Like I was watching the Acolytes documentary before on WWE Network, and they kind of talked about how they just basically beat up Public Enemy for a while. So this kind of stuff
Oh
this kind
yeah,
of
yeah, I
stuff does
remember that.
happen. But with two guys who were really close, and then they've had like some really bad personal issues, just let them go out and just beat the shit out of each other was a bold decision. But they're good friends again now, I believe, which is the main thing.
Yeah, I mean, we saw that in when Edge returned, and they had all the thing with Randy. One of the people who come out to defend Edge before Beth Phoenix got attacked, I think, was Matt Hardy,
Mm.
wasn't it? Like quickly before, because he had suddenly rocked up on AEW as well, so that release happened fucking quick. But I distinctly remember that happening. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It is really strange, and like you say, that rated R thing. And again, I know this is about Edge. I'm gonna have to stop saying that at some point. But like, it's funny how like we get into that rated R character, and arguably the live sex celebration that did not harm his character at all. In fact, that helped his character, but that was kind of damaging for Lita, which is a real shame. And she was, by all accounts, when you hear now, she was sort of basically told you either do that or you don't have a job, which is fab, innit? But obviously, you know, the rated R character is probably that sticks with him now. I believe, like, you still get echoes of that anyway, don't you? But like that was definitely that's his main event guy. That's who he became. Do you know what I mean?
I think
which led into.
I was going to say, you know, you've already mentioned it that before the rated R stuff, he wasn't really, you know, in the main event scene as such. But I think before we go into the next feud as well, I wanted to call out that, you know, to show how good of a feud this was. It was actually voted the Pro Wrestling Illustrated Feud of the Year. Yeah,
Really?
for 2005, which then the next feud we're going to talk about was actually voted the feud of the year for 2006, and
So he's just on point,
absolutely,
wasn't he?
so
On
definitely in
point.
these 2 years. But the next feud that you know we were going to talk about, I know that you're doing a rundown of this, but I wanted to just give a shout out to a guy on our Instagram who actually kind of brought this. You know, we put it out on our story on put a post out as well, just asking for some suggestions, and we got quite a lot through on the stories. But we had this one in the comments as well from Discus Lariat Collective, who's another podcast, and just kind of reminded me of you know the Cena feud, and it was one which it didn't really come to mind or stick out, but then seeing it as the you know the Pro Wrestling Illustrated feud of the year for the following year just goes to show how you know white hot he was, and how obviously working with the likes of Matt Hardy, propelling his rated R stuff into working with the likes of John Cena straight away just goes to show how quickly that happened.
Yeah, and that's funny, innit? Because like at that time, like you say, that was when Cena was like he wasn't even just up and coming. He was it then at that point, wasn't he? So like that's a hell of a feud to move into
Yeah.
from there. So yeah, definitely boss shout out that. And like one that again going back to the social media element, Carl, because I don't I don't have a great deal to say about the John Cena feud. Like you say, I didn't. No offense to it, I didn't think a lot of it at the time. I had nothing against it, but I didn't think a lot of it at the time. It's just nice to look back and see that it was so sort of pivotal, I suppose, and you don't consider at that point like that's really cementing him as that sort of main event guy. But we obviously had the Money in the Bank win, and I believe it's a coin term for him as being the ultimate opportunist.
Yeah.
But he's probably, and is it fair to say he had the best Money in the Bank cash in, or do you think that's an unfair
Well,
statement?
it was the first. I think it was the first Money in the Bank that they did. I believe. I think he.
No, I think it was the first, but do you think because we've obviously had things like Seth Rollins where it was really fucking needed, but do you think Edge and his run with the Money in the Bank was
I
one of
think.
the best,
I think to
if
be
not the
fair,
best,
I
or
mean the Seth Rollins one is probably my favorite cash in. I mean even Dolph Ziggler's is up there for the Raw after WrestleMania, but for me this was Edge's cash in was the what really got the Money in the Bank gimmick over because it was a case of you know okay yeah you get a briefcase
yeah,
but
because it was
you
very
know
new,
you
wasn't
can
it?
cash it in after someone's just gone through a match and they are absolutely fucked, and it just goes to show how powerful that briefcase could be. So for me, you know, it'll always
Mm.
stand out as you know, and the whole ultimate opportunist thing because you know you could have been silly with it and cashed it in for a match at some pay per view and gone into it fresh, or you know they saw the opportunity. Cena was you know wiped out on the floor pretty much after winning his match, and he was like, "Yeah, now's my time. I'll just pick up the scraps." And you know I think that was his
Yeah,
first world championship win as well. So everything coming together was
yeah.
you know.
And do you know what? It's memorable as fuck. Like you say, Seth might be the
Mm.
biggest one for me as well, but just because we really needed that at that point. But like you say, yeah, yeah, it really cemented the whole Money in the Bank
Oh yeah,
concept in there. To be
definitely.
fair, but and before we move on, Carl, because I do want to talk about him returning to tag team work, as it were. But am I going mad here because this is just coming to my mind while we're talking, or did he have a relationship with Vicky Guerrero
He
at one
certainly
point?
did, yeah. Um,
So I need to mention that because I'm confident that was before we got rated RKO. But what was that? Wasn't she like the GM of SmackDown at the time, and he was like keeping his position in the company
yeah,
by
exactly.
currying a bit of favor with her or something like that? It was really kind of like the
Yeah.
hell, because I know Lita left
Mhm.
the company, and then they kind of just paired him in this unusual relationship with
Well, that was
Vicky.
it. I think
It's as I
they
recall it.
kind of used the fact he was the rated R superstar, and obviously he was a heel at the time. Of like, well, how do you solidify your power and not keep hold of your belt as long as you can, really. So it was like, well, I'll just go after Vicky, and obviously he was quite close with Eddie and
Mm.
stuff as well. So yeah, I think they had a lot of fun kind of doing that and working together. But yeah, it's fucking mad. It's mad pro
Yeah.
wrestling, isn't it? Yeah, he had an
Oh,
on-screen thing
really?
with Vicky.
Well, like I feel like that should have been mentioned. Like it wasn't in my list when I was writing this out, but I'm like, it's just coming to my mind now. I'm like, that definitely happened. Like it feels like something that I could have made up, but that no,
No,
that
it
definitely
happened.
happened. Um, but yeah, so we had that during the mix of his time on SmackDown and his time um as a singles competitor. That happened. And then obviously we have, and I must admit, I thought this was not that it wasn't a big team up, but a bigger team up than I thought it was. Because when you ran through the accolades, and we're talking about obviously teaming up with Randy Orton, so we're getting
Mhm.
rated RKO. Um, and I didn't realize they'd only won the tag
I
titles
know it's
once.
mad that, isn't it? Because
It feels like it should have been more because they're a notable tag team. Like that is probably the next one I go to after Edge
yeah,
and Christian.
exactly the same. And if you think of like all the people, like he's won the belt with Jericho twice, and
Yeah, well that's the thing. He's won it with Jericho. He's won it with Hogan. He's won it with Benoit. I think was it Mysterio,
yeah,
one of them
yeah.
as well.
Um,
So he's won it with a lot of people, and he's only won it with Randy once. But I remember Rated RKO so well, probably because they work together so well, and in all fairness, probably because it's been part of the story of when he's come back as well.
mm.
But I don't know, like it feels like they should have had more title runs together. That's
Do
it's
you know what? Do
thrown
you know
me that.
what I think it could be as well? And again, because I don't want to take away from the fact of how awesome they were, but it could just be the fact that they had a tag team name. Because a lot of the time you just don't get that, do you? Like it wasn't like you know it was just Hulk Hogan and Edge or Hulk Hogan and Rey Mysterio. Because I always think of like Jericho and
Yeah,
Big Show, Jericho. You know what I mean? And stuff like that. And if you have a little cool
yeah.
name or a mixed
Do
theme,
you know what Jericho? Do you remember they actually had a
yeah,
theme as
exactly.
well?
Um, I'm,
They merged the two songs,
to be
didn't they? That
honest, I'm
was
not sure.
awesome.
I'm not sure whether
Crank the walls
I'm
down, I
not sure
believe it
whether
was
these
called.
guys did as well. Orton and Edge. To be fair, I'd have to YouTube it after this and see whether or not we're just making it up.
See, in my head, and I could be wrong, but in my head, I kind of had it like they kind of did, but it was like let's play a bit of his and then play a bit of his rather than
Yeah,
actually
yeah, I think
merging
it
the
was
two.
more like that.
Like, yeah, because Jericho's was like, yeah, it was literally like a new song, wasn't it? Merging the two
Mm.
songs together. It's really quite
Yeah,
good. That
well,
it's mad because wasn't they weren't that big of a tag team really, Jericho, but yeah, they put some effort
no,
into that team
definitely.
up,
And
as Jericho likes to
I
do.
think
To
I
be
think the
fair.
fact that we can remember it, it might come down to the fact that they had a tag team name. Do you know what I mean? That's something which
Yeah, I mean we're big on tag teams being tag teams, not just slapped together.
we'll
So you're
come on
quite
to
right
that when
there.
we go through this week in wrestling. But yeah, I'm not a fan of when they just throw fucking people together and say they're a tag team now, which seems to be the ethos.
Well, we've got a dusty tournament, mate, so it's definitely going to happen on NXT a
Yeah.
lot.
Anyway,
Anyway, so obviously we need to get to the really sad
mhm.
part, really, and it's Edge's subsequent injury and retirement. Now, my memory's a little hazy on exactly how this happened because I know he was out injured and then he sort of came back, but then didn't. Do you remember this? He made a return, he speared a few people, and then he kind of wasn't on screen. And then he come out, and I distinctly remember when he came out and sort of made that really emotional speech about the fact that he's kind of done. But yeah, it's like you could tell, and like you'd probably get choked up a little bit watching it now, like how like gutted he was that was the case. Like this is a man who lived for the business. He's already put decades into it, and he had so much more to give, and you could tell that he wasn't done, but he had to
Mhm.
be. Do you know what I mean? And I think the way he explained it as well is that he said like his doctors told him if he keeps going, then he'll end
Yeah.
up paralyzed. And it's like that's you can't mess around with that. You have to like sort of take that and go, well, yeah, I have to retire. But you could tell that he really, really was. again, you might disagree, Carl. You've been watching wrestling a lot longer than I have, but that is probably the most devastated I've ever seen anyone retire. Even when Daniel Bryan retired, I didn't think it was as emotional as Edge having to leave.
No, I think I agree. There was just something about, and I don't know whether it's just the fact of he's a great promo. I know it wasn't a promo; it was real life, but you can just you can just see the
But he knows he's articulate on the mic
Yeah,
anyway, isn't he? So even when he has to say something that he truly means, he's going to put that over
I
better than
think
some, isn't he?
he just gets his emotions across really, really well. He's just an emotional guy, and it comes through, and you can see it on him. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, it definitely hit pretty hard. You could see how much it meant to him, and the fact he's built his way up from Sexton Hardcastle to a tag team guy to getting singles titles to being the world champ and the main event in wrestle. I mean, he main evented fucking WrestleMania with Undertaker for Christ's sake. You can't go bigger than that. So,
That's the
it's mad.
thing. Yeah. But luckily, Carl, luckily, and he was retired for a good while after this, but luckily, and probably one of the things that not only amongst all the million accolades that Edge has got, he is also partly responsible for this podcast, Carl. Let's
Yeah.
be honest, because we were watching the Royal Rumble, and then who should
Oh
rock up
yeah.
out of fucking nowhere because they kept this secret
Hmm.
fantastically. 2020, we got Edge
Yeah.
returning at the Royal Rumble, and it wasn't just I'm returning for the Rumble and then I'm gonna disappear again. No, he come back for a fucking run, and do you know what? It was amazing. And I prefer this to this year's. And I know they have to do this year's differently, and we'll talk about that. But I prefer this whole shock arrival and didn't have to win it. Like he just like we know he's
Hmm.
back, and it was that the crowd was there. They got the massive crowd pop. We were all sort of goosebumps about it. You know, it was just awesome. This year they had to do it differently. There wasn't a crowd. There was no reason not to announce it beforehand. So we knew he was going to be in this Rumble. We didn't know he was going to win, and that was a shock in itself. But I don't think you can ever compare to that shock return of
No,
2020.
it was insane, and you can look at how every single person just marked the fuck out for it because it was so unexpected. He was retired. It wasn't, there was no real rumors of it. At least if there was stuff in the dirt sheets about him potentially being cleared and stuff like that, people still didn't think, oh yeah, we're going to see him anytime soon. He was an actor. He was on Vikings. He was doing all these other things. So it was like, okay, like he wasn't even a thought in our. He certainly wasn't in mine. I don't know whether he was in yours, but when we were going to the Rumble, thinking about
No, honestly, like you say, there was nothing really in the dirt sheets that I was aware of either. You just didn't see it coming, or
yeah,
we
like
didn't.
thinking about like the surprise
You
entrance and
know,
stuff like that, he was just not a name that I thought was possible. I thought he was just done. So to hear that, and it was just you can see the emotion on his face, and I've watched it back a few times since, and it's just the goosebumps you get just seeing it and seeing how much it meant to him and how much it meant to the fans, and just thinking, oh my God, this guy's been told his dream is over, is back for one final run. It was just mental, mental.
mm, indeed. And then of course we move over to this year, Carl. Obviously, he had a nice feud with Randy,
Do you know what though?
that lasted like 7 hours
But do you know what? It's
with two
it's such
matches.
it's
But
just
sorry,
such
go
a shame, isn't it, as well, when you think about it? Because he had this amazing return, and he had this amazing feud with Orton, and then he's been sidelined again, hasn't he, for pretty much the rest of the year? Like he made it through what, like
yeah.
to April, May before he got injured, and then
Was it correct? It was like a pectoral or something. He tore
yeah,
something, didn't he, in that match
yeah,
with
he tore
Randy?
something, which
Mm,
was obviously is how devastating. It's his final chance back, and then he gets injured so soon. So obviously that was
yeah.
devastating.
And in some ways, that as much as at the time we watched this year's Rumble, and spoilers for those who haven't, he won it, and we were a bit like, like it's kind of nice that he came back and won it because of sort of having to be sort of sidelined on his
Mm.
big return. So I don't knock it at all. As I say, it was more just at the time when we were doing our live stream, I probably was it not big on the idea, but as we've got now, Carl, he went on to win this year's
Hmm.
Royal Rumble, and now we are heavily debating who he's going to fight
Hmm.
next. So it leads me to the question, Carl. Before we move on to various other bits we're going to talk about, the question I'll ask you is, who do you want to see him face out of the likes of Balor or Roman or Drew?
I would prefer Roman. I think. I said it on our post Rumble show. I don't
Mm,
think. And I'm not against face versus face when it's done right, but Drew McIntyre is a super face at the minute, and I want to see him take on Sheamus. I don't think it makes sense for him to drop down to NXT. Whereas you've got like the biggest heel in the business in Roman, and you've got like the super mega baby face in Edge. You both do spears. You can build a feud off that. So
Yeah. I would prefer Roman as well. I don't know. Part of me does think that they might pull the trigger with the NXT thing, because it's a place he's never really. He seems to, when he talks about NXT, he's like, it's exciting for him that you can see the passion in people and all this, and it's somewhere he's never worked, and I could see him wanting to do it. You know what I mean? He gets to work with Balor, who I don't think he's had a match with. Correct me if I'm wrong, and he gets to be on a brand that he's not done before, win a title he's not won before. I could see the temptation there.
It'd be
I really
extra
could.
special as well if obviously Beth is announcing it, because obviously she does the commentary for.
Of course, yeah, she's on commentary. Yeah.
I know we didn't speak about it on the news, but I believe that it's possible, because WrestleMania is a 2-night show again this year, that we are going to see the NXT title defended on the card.
So it'll still be a Mania match,
which is
good.
Mania match. But I mean, do I think Edge and Balor would put on a great match? I do. I also think Drew would as well. But yeah, I don't know. I firmly want to see Roman. I think, because unless
that's where I lean towards. I'd like it to be Roman, but I know obviously, and we'll talk about it in This Week in Wrestling. But Edge has pretty much teased every one of them, just for the hell of it. So leave us guessing. You know what I mean? But I don't think I'd be upset with any per se. But definitely Roman would be my favorite one as well. I've got a sneaky suspicion we might see the NXT.
Interesting.
Don't know, man. Don't know. I'm just got a vibe. Good vibe. So, other mentions before we talk about our last point, Carl, is Edge has also had his own talk show, like many wrestlers have had. We had the Cutting Edge, Carl. So, as far as if we had to rank all of the different talk shows, all 648 of them, you got to put Edge's Cutting Edge somewhere near the top.
Yeah.
It's not quite Jericho's highlight reel. It's nowhere near Piper's Pit. But let's face it, it's better than Miz TV or the Dirt Sheet, isn't it?
Oh, yes.
You know what I mean? So it's one of the better talk shows, as much as it's like an overdone thing now. I don't even know I don't think it was particularly overdone when Edge did it, to be fair, but certainly is now.
Yeah. Well, I think it's funny really, because didn't Christian have the Peep Show as well? So they had each of them had their own. But yeah, I think just saying it now, no offense, Edge, but if you listen to WWE, like you probably are, because you rip off everything, don't have another talk show, please. Even if it's Edge, I don't want to see Cutting Edge. No offense, love you, Edge, but no, just no.
Yeah, you can do other things, man. You can do other things. You don't need to do the Cutting Edge. So what we'll do as well, we'll talk about the fact that one other thing I'll mention is I have to thank him for changing the fucking John Cena fucking spinny belt as well. He was responsible for changing the style of that, which I've got to thank him for. Not massively, but at least it was a bit different than John Cena's spinny belt, because they got a bit old a bit fast, didn't they? But he had his unique championship in the Rated R belt.
To be fair, it's another accolade to the list, really, because there's not that many people who've had their own thing. You know what I mean? You had the Smoking Skull belt from Stone Cold. You had the $1 million belt for $1 Million Man, but definitely unique.
Yeah, and you get some designs that aren't used. Like Undertaker's got his own belt, but it was never used in WWE, was it? It's just one you can get now. So it is, like you say, it's one of them where like this was a belt that we wore week by week. So it's not often you get to have your own specific design, which is cool. I know they do the side plates now,
unless you're John Cena, in which case you basically just get your own version of every belt. Because you're John Cena.
Yeah, any belt you touch.
Damn it, make it spin.
So yeah, I want it full of diamonds. I want it to spin. Like, okay, John. But yeah, so I just wanted to mention that. But the last bit I wanted to mention, last thing we'll talk about, is obviously he had a lot of time away from WWE. And what did he do in that time, Carl? Well, he went and became a fucking good actor as well, didn't he? because multi-talented man that he is. We saw him in the likes of The Flash, which is a show that I do actually watch, so I could talk about that. I think he appeared in season 2, brief roles, but he was in The Flash, and therefore part of the Arrowverse, and therefore knows Stephen and Mel, and therefore will probably turn up in heels alongside CM Punk. Rumor mill. But then, obviously, he's been very notable, and sadly, it's not a show I watch, but one I'll probably get to at some point. But he's been very notable of playing a Viking in. I think the show is actually called Vikings. Am I right in saying that?
It was funny, really, because I don't watch it either, and it's something that my dad watches, and he's been telling me to watch it for ages. So eventually, I'll get round to it. But I was chatting the other day with him about wrestling and stuff like that. And he was like, "Oh yeah, it's Edge won the Rumble, didn't he?" I was like, "Yeah, yeah." I was like, "Do you know what? I didn't even know he was on Vikings. Like, I watch it, but because he was that good, I didn't even recognize it was him." And I was just like, "Oh, so there you go. He must have some decent acting chops then." He passed as an actor.
I can see it, to be fair, because he's like, when you can do such good character work in the ring, I think acting's not a million mile away. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, look at no offense to him. I'm not having a pop, but look at Batista. You know what I mean? He's had a fantastic acting career now, and is one I would not have guessed. In all fairness, no disrespect to him. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me that Edge is a talented actor. But yeah, so on top of that, he's got that career outside of it. And to be honest, that says so much more about wrestling for him, doesn't it? Because he's had that as like well, I can't wrestle anymore, I'll do this. And he's still sort of had that passion. He's had to come back. He wasn't done with it, and he knew he wasn't done with it. And I don't know. It says a lot on it when you can be that impassioned about something.
Yeah. I think he was in a film as well called Money Plane, which came out last year, which I've not seen yet either, but so he did actually translate into the.
I love this part of our talk. He's did a lot of stuff we've not seen.
Attention to. That was the history of Edge. I suppose to finish the whole segment off, what's the future look like, Anthony? Is he going to win? What's next for him? Who will he face? What will he do?
I think he's got another title running him. So I'm not saying he's going to beat Roman. I'm not quite sure how it's going to play out, but I think we could see him with the title on him again at some point. I think a lot of people would be annoyed, especially with the work Roman's doing at the minute, if he goes up against Roman and wins. This is where, again, I kind of lean towards NXT because he's never been an NXT champ before. And it's not that damaging if he wins against Balor.
But, which I thought was weird as well. And I know we're going to cover this on This Week in Wrestling shortly. But, when he was on NXT, he said to Balor, didn't he? "I've never had that," and pointed to the belt. He's never been a Universal Champion. Just going to throw it out there.
Yeah, but he probably knows that that's just a load of bullshit anyway.
Like, I know he's a 7-time world heavyweight.
All the Universal title is.
It's not called that anymore. So technically.
Yeah, all the Universal belt is the big gold belt. But they don't want to use the big gold belt anymore. Because it has to have a massive WWE logo.
You know what? We need to talk about this on another thing, because I don't want to derail this, but I fucking hate them new belts. In fact, I hate pretty much all the new belts they've got. But do you remember when, like,
I think, tell you what, Carl, have we got anything on next week? Anything already in the books for next week?
Not sure, Don't think so. We have had an email from, a guest, an upcoming guest, but I don't think it's for next week.
Okay, so what we'll do, all being well, next week we'll go through the belts we love and the belts we hate and why we fucking hate them.
I like it.
And I think that's a topic.
Sounds like a belter.
It's a belter. Love it. So that was pretty much our talk on Edge, and I know this is like the history of, and we've ran through his career, albeit somewhat briefly, but this is so we can talk about the main sort of things we remember about his career and why he's an absolute ledge. Again, you need to make that share, Carl. And yeah, I mean, for me, I honestly, I don't know what this whole ageism thing is. Like, I've not got an issue with the fact he's 47 because to me it's down to whether you can go in the ring, and he certainly fucking can. So yeah, I want to see him with the belt again. I want to see him with the NXT belt. I've decided during this conversation. I've decided beat Balor. Go on, go do it.
I'm just excited for the ones he wasn't able to work with. Do you know what I mean? I think it's a shame that since he's come back, he's just worked with Randy and only Randy in a sense, because we've seen that as well.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I thought it was right. It was booked correctly and everything. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'd like to see him against like a Seth Rollins or some some new talent.
Seth is a definite match. Like I really need to see that before long. Like I don't know how soon they can do it because he's obviously going into other things at the minute. But we need to get him and Seth against each other somehow. That'll
Oh
be
yeah,
awesome.
I want to see it.
Been wanting that. Been wanting that the first time he returned, and then he went against Randy 700 times.
For 700 minutes apiece.
So that was our talk on the man that is Edge.
Hmm.
So we hope you enjoyed it. We'll do more of these. We'll look at specific people in the future, but we thought it's only in keeping, given the big return and the speculation over what he's going to do next. It seemed like the right one to do for the first, I think, history of wrestling.
It is the first.
So here you are. This is an iconic moment. Remember it, guys. Another accolade for Edge too.
Yeah, he was the first on our history of series. So if he wasn't in the Hall of Fame, I'm sure that would be the tip of the iceberg that gets him in.
Oh yeah, of course. So obviously we'll have a short break. You'll hear from our sponsors shortly, and then we will be right back with This Week in Wrestling.